everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. So, today we have our fourth and final session of the introductory series on the Bhagavad Gita, hosted by the lovely Ragini Anand. In this session, she's going to dig deeper into what it means for us to live in truth and in Dharma, and what are the actual tools in the toolkit for allowing us to live in Dharma at all times. So, thank you so much, Ragini, for these wonderful sessions. We're really looking forward to this one. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much once again. Hello, my fellow seekers of truth, wherever you are. I wish you a lovely day. On this 19th of January 2021, I give this talk from London. And what an interesting geopolitical week we have witnessed, especially for those who are following what's going on in the US and in Washington. We can sense that there is almost a civil war brewing over there, and a battlefield is drawn between the prime minister who's leaving and the one who is taking office. Not only that, there is a battlefield on to be vaccinated or not to be vaccinated. Another battlefield is the Great Reset, where the powers to be are deciding how economies of the earth plane will be shaped in the future. So there are many battlefields as we described it during these series of talks. There are multiple battlefields being drawn at every time. And at this particular time, there seems to be more battlefields than few. Our children are being taught in Zoom rooms. There's a battlefield brewing with children and their mental capacity to stay alert and focused, and basically they're seeing a meltdown. So I just want us to remind ourselves of the three talks that we've already had. The first talk was very much talking about this battlefield where the hope candle was flickering, when the ego's effectiveness as a sort of a organ of consciousness is basically losing its effectiveness. What do we mean by that? Well, what is mine is being challenged. Me and mine is being challenged. My security is being challenged. My money, my relationships, my health, all of these things are being challenged. Those were the egoistic-led, consciousness, material world, as we call it. Those things are losing their effectiveness. And it's forcing us to turn outside in and forcing us to draw on our resources of consciousness, this missing ingredient, so that we can remain resilient at all times. So whereas we were in the past looking at ego as our organ of consciousness, now we are looking further up the chain and looking at higher identity of ourselves as the organ of effectiveness, organ of consciousness, I should say. So that was the first talk. We talked about that. Then we said, well, actually, the Vedic culture has many things in its toolkit to not only allow you to turn your gaze inwards, but it also is a toolkit for allow you to grow your consciousness, and it's a toolkit for staying resilient during a battle. So the very first thing we talked in that second talk, we were introducing Mahabarata as the Great War, and how the negation of the Vedic culture from our media, from our academia, from our politicians is really depriving us of a toolkit that can actually become very useful in the days that we find ourselves living in. So in that second talk, we talked about the characters of Mahabharata. And Mahabharata introduces the extremes of human characters, both in all the spectrums, whether they are on the side of the truth or on the side of the untruth. So it becomes a sort of an observation platform for us to look at the types of characters that exist in nature. And I don't know about you, but for those who have watched Mahabharata, you can see that certain characters in Mahabharata map onto characters of our times today. So you will see a Duryodhan, an equivalent of Duryodhan in in the world we see ourselves in today, or you will see somebody who is similar to Karna or to Bhishma Pitta or any of the or Draupadi and so on. So it gives us a observation platform to do incredible curious search and look at different characters that it outlines so beautifully. So that was our second talk. And in that second talk, we looked at these sort of the root patterns that were developing that made war almost it was set. The war was set. There was no going back. The war was inevitable because of the choices people had made in that time. There were some people that had made right choices, and there were some people who had made pleasant choices or blind choices versus conscious choices. And that set the scene. And then in the third talk, we talked about the Gita, and this is where the kernel, the kind of, if you like, the toolkit for survival is mapped out by Krishna and it's given to Arjuna. And in that toolkit, we are really being shown not only the art of living, how to live your life, but also Krishna is dictating the art of dying, more importantly, how to die in life. Both those sides of the equations are very important in navigating life in a responsible way. So we looked a bit about that in the third talk that we did, and the choices between hard power and soft power, and how Gita can help us as a tool to go beyond duality and go towards Advaita. Okay, so whenever there is a battlefield, a door opens for evolution. Beautifully, a door opens. You can stay in delusion and get more deluded and destroy yourself during that battle, or you can find yourself getting less deluded, making right choices, and be liberated in that battle. So you could argue that this every battle poses itself as a portal for evolution. And that's a very positive way to look at a battlefield. You go into a battlefield to evolve rather than devolve. And that's what the Gita is all about, and Mahabharata is all about, if you look at it in that way. So, this talk, then, the final talk, what I want to really talk about is what is the solution? What is going to always allow us to stay in a space that determines whether we are in the dharmic way of living or a dharmic way of living? Now, that's a big ask. Who's going to tell us what is dharmic and what is not dharmic? And what does dharmic mean anyhow? Okay. So I think we, in our second talk, or possibly in our third talk, kind of gave some flavor of the distinction between dharma and adharma. Dharma is about the whole, and adharma is about, just looking at me and mine, being very focused on the material. Dharmic is more focused on the consciousness and being conscious in every action. So this fourth talk, I want to talk a little bit about how Mahabharata can help us and Gita can help us in solving problems, so that as a battlefield begins in our life, how can we use that battlefield to ascend and evolve through the door that opens? Now, the first way that I would absolutely, kind of ask everybody to watch Mahabharata in the TV serial form, or read Mahabharata from a good source, and then really begin to ponder on the characters. Become very curious about the characters. So that's the very first step. Try and calibrate yourself against a character or against a number of characters. So as I've been doing this, I've kind of said, well, who am I in Mahabharata? Who's depicting my nature mainly? You're never going to be exactly one character. You're going to be a certain proportion of, the baddie, certain proportion of the goodie. But it's a very good interrogation that you will do of yourself, going inward and looking at your nature and say, well, who am I emulating most? And I found myself very much in the camp of Karna, not going too much into the whys at this stage, because it's a long story, would need a session on its own. But, his qualities, how he is stuck in the wrong camp while still being sided with truth, seems to seems to resonate with me in my life. And you will find some character that resonates with you. And you can then begin to kind of look at that character and try and ascertain what the root pattern of that character is. So if you look at Karna, Karna is a character whose root pattern developed at a very young age, when basically his mother Kunti leaves him because he is the son of the planet Sun, and Kunti, and is kind of an illegitimate child in a sense. And for Kunti to kind of be protected in society, she doesn't want to own up to that, so she lets him go. So at a very young age, Karna develops a pattern of abandonment. Okay, so his inner talk would be, I am abandoned, I am not loved, I am not one of the, the people who have adopted me. I don't know who I am. Those are the inner conversation that he picked up as a youngster. And then that root pattern drives his entire life to the end. That root pattern begins to drive his life. Now, you will find similarly, if you observe your own life, there will be a root pattern that you will have picked up before the age of 7. And you will have been having that inner talk since then, because that was the first time you felt that you were not powerful. Okay, the root pattern develops when you first feel you're not powerful, and then that self-talk becomes a self-hypnosis that then continues to shape your life. So the very first thing I would ask everybody to do, if they want to begin this inward journey of correction and conscious behavior, is to look at what your root patterns may be. Mine definitely were, I am abandoned, because I left my parents at the age of 4. and I was hosted by grandparents and uncles and aunts all over the world. And definitely my root pattern was, I'm abandoned, I'm not loved, I am not good enough. And that takes a lot of admission to kind of come out with that and say that that's what has driven you all the way throughout your life. Now, the second thing that you can do with Mahabharata and the Gita is for those that believe in sound therapy and mantras as being sort of a cure in themselves, or these slokas of the Gita being a cure in itself. You can just listen to the Gita, the 18 verses of the Gita. You can listen to them, and through the vibrations of the sound, you can grow, or you can heighten your levels of consciousness. Now, without going too much into the science of sound and everything else, there is a big body of research that has an immense impact on the consciousness of a human being, and that if you can, just listen to the Gita, that also is a powerful tool in your toolkit. Now, the main premise of the Gita and Mahabharata is live a truthful life. It is a war between truth and untruth. So what does this mean? How do we even begin to say, are we being, whose truth are we going to abide to? Truth varies, does it not, from person to person, perception to perception? But I think what we are being asked to do is that if you observe yourself, you will find that you are fragmented. Okay? So most masters will have a unfragmented consciousness. What we have developed is this fragmented consciousness. What I mean by that is we are different things to different people, different person in different situation. We are not a whole. We are not always consistent in the way we present ourselves to ourselves and to the outer world. And that fragmentation is a bit like a mirror being fragmented in many pieces. And then you're trying to reflect the light, what we call the soul. The soul is not going to reflect properly. It doesn't know how to reflect. It doesn't know, what do you want? Do you want this reflection or that reflection? So there is a cacophony of noise, a fragmentation of our consciousness. And when that happens, we are not living in truth. And our job when we turn inwards is to knit all of those broken pieces together, somehow make those fragmented pieces heal so that we become whole, and we become what my guru would call authentic, not just to the outside world, but to yourself. Integrated, meaning all these fragmented pieces are brought together. You become responsible for the whole, not just one piece of your consciousness, but for the whole. And you start to enrich and cause realities for others rather than just for yourself. So that's when we're living in this kind of a beautiful space of a truthful life, when you're sided with life, and you're not living in untruth. That's what I believe we're being asked to do. Now, Mahabharata is the science of completion. Completing meaning completing yourself into this whole. Because going from this broken mirror to a full mirror It means you're going from the devolved existence to the evolved existence of yourself. Now, that sounds, I'm sure all of you will resonate. We are fragmented, and that the first, if you like, step you can take towards your completion is the admission of the fact that you're not really authentic, that you're not really integrated, that you don't always act in a responsible way, that we don't always are on the ready to enrich others and to cause their reality. And when that happens, there is such a thing as the logic of time. Time has its own logic, and it will work to destroy you during this delusionary door that opens if you have not completed your patterns. Okay, that's what we mean by going down into the destructive cycle. Time has its own logic. It will say, work on your root pattern, work on your completion, do it now, do it now, do it now. And then the war just starts as it did in Mahabarata, and Arjuna finds himself in the midline. Thankfully, Arjuna was complete, mostly, yes? And he arrives at the gate of the door that opens, and he evolves because he wins the war. Unfortunately, Duryodhan had not done the work on himself, and he finds himself being destroyed. So the womb of time, when we are in our mother's womb, during that time we create our body and our mind. Well, remember in our last talk, we talked about guru-disciple relationship. Hinduism is all about guru-disciple relationship. And guru, when we are in guru time, we are building consciousness. When we are in the womb time, we are creating body and mind. Mind is very different to consciousness. Guru helps us to create consciousness. Now, that too has been made very unfashionable to look at gurus, but it is the science of completion from the Vedic tradition. So if you look at the characters in Mahabharata, whether it's Bhishma or whether it's Drona or whether it's Karna, they've all had gurus. So Karna, Bhishma, and Drona share a guru in Parsuram, who is the ultimate guru who had learned from Shiva himself. And you find Krishna has his own guru called Sandipani, which, he had to learn from him. Arjuna has his own guru in Drona and Krishna. So this guru-disciple relationship is kind of at the core of Vedic culture, which allows us to create consciousness. In order to create consciousness, we have to really dissolve the mind, because the mind is the conditioned bit that confuses us. What is true, what is untrue, what is dharma, what is karma. All of those thoughts have to be ironed out for your consciousness to grow. Consciousness is something that is given to you through initiations, and it is a powerful transmission that happens in a guru-disciple relationship. So that too is something for you to work on. When the student is ready, the guru appears, as they say. And I have found that has been critical, if not the most important, ingredient in my erasure, my ability to erase some thinking that was so deeply ingrained in me, my impossibilities, my negativity, my view of myself as the body and nothing else, all of that was so habitual, so ingrained so deeply that I was unable to, by my own self, fix that. It was like literally being in darkness, not knowing where to turn. And then I have trained with various masters over the time, and the right master turns up at the right time to dispel some of your, wrong thinking, to erase some of that, to help you go towards light. So that's an important lesson that we get from Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita. Now, the other thing that I have been very in terms of taking tools for aligning to the truth, I have really enjoyed over the recent history since the lockdown started March 2020, is to look at this one toolkit which allows us to look at ourselves in 4 different images. Now, we will do this together today, looking at Arjuna's image of himself, his outer image, his other's image of himself, and his view of the world. So let me repeat that. Each one of us has 4 distinct identities. One identity is how we are inside, our inner image. So we look at ourselves inwardly as, as I said, I had a root pattern. I'm abandoned. I'm not loved. I'm not good enough. I'm a woman, therefore not equivalent. Those are the inner kind of language that you use to yourself, okay? Your inner images. I am, if I continue with my own inner image, I'm mainly good. I want the best for the world. I want to learn. I want to, be sided with the truth. I am honest. I like to give. Those are the sorts of things you would say to yourself. But then outwardly, I might say something else. Outwardly, I might say, look how comfortable I am, look how powerful I am, look how much, value I have, look how much status I have, look at my name, my fame, my money, my health, my wealth, and it may not marry up with what the inner image of us and the outer image of us will not necessarily tie up. Now, that's the work you need to do on yourself, is if you are living in a untruth, then those 2 things will be very unaligned. And I certainly had my biggest breakthrough, my life's biggest breakthrough happened when I owned up all my inner world to the outside, when I gave up all my lies, and there were no more gremlins left in my cupboard. And there were some difficult truths to actually bring out, so painful that you felt that the world would end if you owned up to that truth. But by doing that, I became liberated. You have to go through that pain. And if you don't, then you will always be adding to your delusion. So the first work that we all need to do, and do not buy anybody who says they have nothing wrong that they have ever done. That's going to be an impossibility, okay? That there's no such thing, because if they were, then they would be enlightened, right? So there's always a gremlin in your cupboard. There's always something that you need to own up to. There's always a mismatch between your inner image of yourself and the outer image that you portray. Now, the next image is others' image of you. So when somebody outside of you is looking at you, what do they see? So they may say things like, oh, well, that person's easily scared. They seem anxious. They seem like they're holding on to a lie. That will be their view. So they will pick up subtly on the inconsistency between your inner image and your outer image. And that will create its own patterns as to how the outside world, whether it supports you or doesn't support you. Now, in the war of Mahabharata, there were many people who were caught on the wrong side. So Karna was one, Bhishmapita was one, Dronacharya, Kripacharya. They all wanted to be on the side of the truth, but they were caught up in having to protect Hastinapur for whatever reason and fight from the untruth side. Okay, so that's what I mean. The outer image, you will have friends or foes outside, depending on how they view your inner image matching up with your outer image. So that's the third image. And the fourth image is your view of the world. So how you see the world. You might see it as a threatening place or a loving place or a place where everything is perfect or a place where it's just a battleground or whatever. Now, the great work we need to do is to bring all of these images in alignment. And in doing so, we become more and more conscious. Isn't that wonderful? Just one toolkit of doing alignment of those four images will make us more conscious. So let's look at Duryodhana's world now for a minute. Okay, so we are going to guess because we don't have him here to, argue with us. However, we can kind of take a stab at what his four images might look like. So his inner image is angry, he's jealous, he's lustful, he's comparing himself, is competing. He's saying, I am the master. I'm going to enslave everybody. I'm the only thing that matters. And the body, the physical world, the material world is the only truth. That's his inner image of himself. The outer image he portrays is I am brave warrior. I'm just. I'm a leader. I'm princely. I'm courageous. Yes? The world's image of him is he's arrogant, he's incapable, he's unjust, he's egoistic, he's unstable, he's undharmic, he's self-centered, he's irresponsible, he's unauthentic, he's unintegrated. You see where this is going? None of these match up. And his image of the world is what is his is his. What is theirs is also his. Also, the world's image is the world hates me. He has doubts. He loathes himself. He doubts himself. And he thinks the world is against him. So that's Duryodhana's world. Now, you can see very clearly when you do this exercise, it doesn't create a stable character, does it? Now, let's look at Arjuna's image, maybe. His view is, I am a disciple. I have a guru called Krishna. Consciousness matters. I will give up my needs over the needs of the others and the whole. So he's kind of a Tyaga, sacrifices his kind of big thing. I control my anger. I control my lust. I control my jealousy. I compete with myself. And consciousness is the only truth, not material. Very different. Now, if you look at his outer image, it's still the same. I am the disciple. God's will matters. I will give up my needs for the others, etc. So his inner image and his outer image, I can't find anything that I could put that is different. Now, world image of himself, the world's image of him is that he's capable, he's just, he's dharmic, he's tyagi, he's responsible, he's integrated, he's authentic. He enriches the world, i.e., he is a contributor. He causes other people's reality. He wants the best for the whole. And his view of the world is perfect. It belongs to all. It's beautiful, creation of the Lord, and it deserves preservation and protecting. Now, very clearly, by just doing this simple exercise, you can see who is destined for greatness and who isn't. And you will find the same thing happening in your inner space as you do this exercise for yourself or for others in your inner circle and your extended circle. You will begin to see what's going on, and you'll be able to enrich and cause people's reality to move them more towards completion of these fragmented parts, becoming an enricher and a causer of their reality, and helping them ascend and helping them evolve another level. So that is the beauty of looking at Mahabharata and Gita, just starting it at that and looking at the deeper gems and the toolkits they present to navigate life. You can also see that if you understand the 7 chakras of our physiology, the Muladhara, Swadhisthana, and Manipurna, the lowest level of chakras, all kind of materially led, body and lust and reproduction and greed and fear and pleasure and shame and self-doubt. Those 3 chakras is where Duryodhana is operating from. And Anahata, Vishuddha, Agnya chakra, and Sahasrara, those are the top 4 chakras. You could say that Arjuna, as soon as he becomes a devotee, his heart has opened and he is now giving love and receiving love. And he can become compassionate and empathetic by opening that chakra. He's evolved to the next. He is working up the chakras, opening them up. Okay, you could argue that he's even got his 3rd eye chakra open because he's got the most extraordinary power, physical power, mental, physiological power. And he's only 1 step away from Krishna, whose Sahasrara is open. He is basically an incarnation. So we are all on this journey of moving the soul is not inside our body. The soul reflects on the body, and it depends on where you're placing the reflection. What chakra you're putting the reflection will impact what level of consciousness you are raising yourself to. Okay, so the journey is very clear. If you want to evolve, then you have to work towards going towards the higher chakras and opening them up, rather than working through the coarse, the very basal chakras of operation, the first 3 chakras, which is where Duryodhana is operating from. So again, our philosophy, our culture can guide us to stay incredibly resilient and is critical in evolving ourselves to the next level of consciousness. And I I cannot stop drawing from it. And, once you are in that space, you are guided from inside, the intuitions that come as to what is right, what is dharmic, what is not dharmic. Are you being most discerning in every moment? Are you siding with the truth in every moment? You become aware at every time, every moment in your life, drawing from these great Vedic truths and applying them. Apply, practice, practice, practice. If you don't practice, it just remains words in a book and words in talks, and it doesn't go anywhere. So, with that, I'm concluding my 4 talks, and I am wishing you a really great inward journey. I said to my husband yesterday, I said, the inner world is always the most powerful because that's where everything is created. Everything that you see in the material world first starts in the inner world. A mother gives birth to a baby from inside, not it's outside and then you take it in. The inner world is where the power is. Do not exclude consciousness from your life. Do not make it all material. Please turn your gaze inward and become truly, truly resilient and powerful and enjoy your life because it's meant to be a celebration, and be very pro-life. Integrate your fragmented personalities and become one so that you have no pinch points, no pain, no, inauthenticity left in your life. You can walk freely and use your life purpose to be the guiding light. We all are, one way or the other. When we complete with ourselves, we begin to help others that need completion. It's as simple as that. So thank you, thank you, thank you for listening to me rambling on for all these sessions. I've thoroughly enjoyed preparing for them and working with you. I hope some of it has been useful. And please do pick up the Mahabarata and watch it. And maybe we'll have an opportunity again to come together and learn together and be together. So thank you. I'll take any questions you may have now.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely beautiful. So for everyone here, the floor is now open to questions. So if you guys have any questions, you can just post it in post a question. And I believe we already have a few. So the first question that we have is, if right and wrong, that is duality, is an extension of the ego, how can we postulate a proper way to experience life, that is mindfulness? If we are seeking to overcome the ego, can we use the ego to walk towards the notion of mindfulness? I imagine this would be similar to trying to fly by using your own height to boost yourself.
Okay, the ego, as I understand it, it is an organ of consciousness. It cannot be excluded till you're alive. It cannot be excluded. But how effective is it is where you have to become aware how it is either impairing your decision or improving your decision. How can you use it with your will persistence to drive you towards situations where you become more powerful, not in a negative way, but in a dharmic way. Now that's all the art, and I don't know if I've understood your question well enough, and maybe I won't, even if you repeat it. My view is that consciousness, if it is a line, one end of the spectrum is ego, and at the other end of the spectrum is super consciousness. Okay, so it's part of consciousness, but it's at one end of the spectrum, and it's absolutely needed in order to survive and navigate the material world. But with the light of the other end of the consciousness, you can always ask, is this a completely ego-led thinking that I am adhering to, or am I using the light and the ego together to work together to take me more closer to the expanded consciousness levels? I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the best I can do with that from where I am.
Thank you. Thank you. We have another question. I'd really love and appreciate your opinion on this. But what if the very thing we are battling against could bring us ultimate freedom? Like through this battle, only battling against our own feelings, and the answer residing in surrendering and actually embracing the enemy and meet our feelings regarding it with love, which will only amplify our genuine love ways.
Yes, absolutely. That's the Advaita principle that you get to eventually, right? I think Mahabarata is showing you that in every moment, love is kind of injected. There is love, but you cannot stop at your duty. So you have to look at your different roles that you're playing in different slices of time. So you have to, even in the act of doing your duty in war, still be sided with love. And by siding with love, we mean siding with consciousness, siding with Krishna consciousness. So it's kind of almost contradictory, one would expect. With our logic, we would think, well, that's kind of illogical. That doesn't make sense. But at the core value of it, you are sided with the truth, which is love. Okay, and if you're sided with it, then you're looking for the best for the whole in that situation. Your love is being projected for the whole rather than individually to yourself.
Thank you. We have another question. As per the 12th shloka of the Isha Upanishad, one who worships or works on the outside or the material world falls into darkness. One who worships or works on the inner world also falls into darkness. When all this leads us to darkness, how do we then reach light? Where to start the work or worship from?
That's the beautiful dual nature of things. Whichever way you go, you come to that same blind spot, right? That same problem. And I think I kind of alluded to that, and I just get a feel of it. I can't say I've mastered it, and that will take a number of years, I think, for me to get there. But you're right. Whichever way you go, you see yourself being trapped in the same kind of conversation in your head. And it's almost kind of like an impasse, yeah. But the ascendance, Advaita is saying, treat every situation with love, truth, and bliss. It's Sachidananda, the only quality of consciousness is love, truth, and bliss. And we're asked to kind of be in that space at all times, knowing that the material is actually impermanent. The only thing that is permanent is consciousness. And it's saying, let go of everything, let go of every situation. Both sides are right and both sides are wrong. Just give up and be in this space, which is all perfection. Now, that's that's where we're all trying to get to. But we have to navigate the material world and complete our completions before we can go there, I think.
Thank you. Um, we have one more question. Is the role of the guru to add or transmit something to the incomplete student, or to help the student remove impediments to shining the perfect light that already exists within?
How I understand the initiations, and I've been through many, is that they do act like a key that it just increases your wattage. You know, if you were a light bulb and you were operating at 30 watts, after an initiation, you suddenly see more, you become 40 watts, 50 watts, and it carries on. You become aware internally, you get more insights. That's what I've noticed. I get more answers to questions that I have internally as I become initiated. So to me, it is some transference of, it's like a key, is what I would like to see it as, that opens up the capacity to receive more light into your system. Because if you got it all at once, I think it would just frazzle you. So that key just opens it up to a level to at which you can take it in your, you know, evolutionary path at that time, so that you aren't frazzled by it. You're just slowly being the you know, the volume is being turned up ever so gently with that key. That's how I'm seeing it. So a guru for me has been essential in my journey to, and I cannot, I mean, there's no doubt left in my head that, you know, through initiation, certain things happened in my life. And those are very private and personal experiences, which only you know as your experience. Yeah. And so for me, it's very real.
Thank you. We have three more questions, and I think we'll close it after that. So the first one is: you spoke of abandonment. I resonate with that personally. My inner voices might tell me I am unloved. However, I've made a breakthrough recently, and I'm learning to raise my vibration. My higher chakras are opening more than my lower. My biggest challenge is fear of love, fear of loving myself, fear of loving others. Confronted with a situation where others show fear as well, more often than not, I fall into the trap. How might I face this challenge within myself?
That's beautiful. And I resonate with that, with my own journey. I don't think you can. What you've got to do is work on yourself, is what I've noticed. You cannot bring somebody on board, um, you know, unless they're ready. Okay. But the projection begins to happen from inside out. Your life begins to change as you change. So let's take that abandonment issue. I've looked at my abandonment having an impact on every level of my life, whether it's been health, wealth, you know, my progression in my career, my very wonderful career, everything that held me back, made me powerless, has stemmed from that root pattern. Okay. Now, as I dissolve it, and as I complete with that, one of the things you have to do is go back to the people that you felt implicated that root pattern or gave you that root pattern, and complete with them, forgive them, you know, say to them that this is what you experienced. You know, being a youngster, for me, you know, I've told my mother, look, when you left me in the arms of my grandfather, this is what I felt, Mom. I felt abandoned. I felt unloved. I want you to know that I felt that. And when you do that, then suddenly something starts changing. Okay. So for me, in April of last year, I had to make that call to my mother and say exactly what I felt. And then there was this release. and she viewed me differently, and some of my other relationships started to become healed. People from nowhere would call me and say, I remember you, we had such a great conversation, and it was so helpful. It's those little things that you notice. So what I would say to you is, don't give up on that, raising your vibration. And you will notice as you work through those patterns that there is a big shift in the outside world, because you're projecting everything from the inside out. Things will change definitely as you begin to complete with yourself and your patterns and your identities. There's multiple levels at which you have to work, and it's not an overnight thing. It will come through the inner seeking, that the path that you're on already.
Thank you. And we have two more and then we'll stop. I didn't quite get how we actually integrate the different personalities and put the mirror pieces back together. What I picked up is through opening / focusing on the upper chakras, but it's kind of vague for me how it's done properly and how that should work.
Okay, so it's again about awareness. So become aware of what your inner talk is daily. Okay? What do you say to yourself daily, in every moment? What are you saying, and how are you then filtering with your conditioned thinking to have you present yourself outside? That's a big body of work, right? So let me give you an example. I might say, oh, inside, I might say, oh God, I'm very frightened of losing money. Okay, that's my fear pattern. Okay, and then I filter that by filtering. Oh, you must never come across as being weak outside. So outwardly, I might present myself as, oh, I think fear. I'm never fearful of money, of not having money. I would always survive. Now that you've got to take that one thing and have the courage to say outside what is true inside, and take one or two nearest people and say, you know what, when I say I'm not fearful of losing my money, and I'm very strong and I can build myself up again, actually, really, if you ask me, I am fearful, and these are the reasons why I am fearful. Start unpacking it. Start unpacking what's at the end of your fear. And normally it is, a root pattern of fear is always embedded in fear of death. So then you have to work on the fear of death. Live, do meditations of dying. What might that feel like? And when you start doing that, fear happens at 3 levels. Fear is of death, and the other root pattern is food, eating, and the other one is lust. So you have to keep working on those 3 patterns, from which all the other patterns stem. So you have to work backwards, and then you will see that when you've done this kind of admission and work, that things will begin to kind of just align slowly. If I told you what my inner lies were, you would shudder. I was having affairs. I was having, and couldn't tell people because I was scared, and I was living a lie, and all this kind of stuff that goes on. I don't want to get into the kind of messes we can get ourselves into, but we can all admit that we get ourselves in huge messes. And when you bring that truth out from the inside, then what was a lie becomes a truth, both inside and outside. And that's when you start seeing alignment.
Thank you. And the last question is, would you say one has to let go of being loved?
Let go of being loved. Okay, my view on love is such an ambiguous word. First of all, our understanding of love is the wrong love. It's the dual love which follows hate. The undual love is always there. You can never lose it. You are it. It's always there. That's what I was talking about, that nature of the cosmos. The underlying quality of the cosmos is love. And so you can never lose it. You can never hope to find it. You can that, and the love that you can find and lose is not the right love. It's it's the ambiguous, the dual, the dual version of love, which could be lost or found. We have to begin when we say everything is, even if when you're watching Mahabharata, everything is love, because even Duryodhan and his condition is love, because it's allowing Arjuna to have the experience that he has, right? Now, if Duryodhan wasn't the baddie that he is, how could have Arjuna had the experience that he's had of being the goodie? That is love. The love is that both sides can be experienced through each other as existence. And that is the beauty of love. It's always there. There are no sides really. When you start seeing perfection, perfection is everywhere, happening at all times. Whatever's happening is just perfect because it's coming from love.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think with that, we're done with the questions. I just really want to say thank you so much for these 4 sessions. They've been so beautiful and so powerful. And we really hope to do more with you. So thank you so much for your time. This has been extremely, extremely wonderful. And thank you, everyone, for being here with us as well.
Thank you so much for your listening. And listening is God. So, you've all listened, and I have been really honored to have your listening. Thank you for inviting me.
We're really grateful to have you here. So thank you for being here with us. Really, really, Kampman. Thank you so much.